Hi, it's Amy Chappell from Amy Marina Designs, and today I'm here to walk you through this bat block. Now, this is part of my series for my Batty Pumpkin table topper, where I am going through all of the different blocks and how to put them together. I will also be releasing a video on how to put the entire table topper together, so make sure you watch for that. But this bat is also included in my bat mini quilt, so I will include the links to both of those patterns in the description below. Both of them come together the same way. They're the same size pieces and everything. So the only difference might be how the fabric pieces are labeled. So you'll just want to pay attention to that. Now that we have all of that out of the way, let's get started sewing. I do have a couple of tips for this. The first tip is to starch your fabrics before you cut out your pieces. Because of all the angles that we're sewing with here, it's really helpful if they're starched. It helps them hold their shape, helps them to stay into place, and keeps everything nice and sharp. The second tip that I have is if you don't necessarily like drawing your diagonal lines on the back of your squares and you typically use a guide and that kind of thing, and you tend to be a little more casual in your sewing, there is absolutely no judgment from me because that is how I roll. But on this particular block, it's really important that your seam allowances are accurate and that your angles are accurate. And that way you get all of these little corners lining up just right. If they don't match up, chances are your seam allowances are off just a little bit. So pay attention when you're sewing on your diagonal lines and when you are sewing your 1/4 inch seam allowances to make sure that everything is as accurate as you can make it. Now, obviously, there's going to be little bits. This is not perfectly perfect. Neither is this right here. And you know what? Once you quilt it, it's going to disappear. But the closer you are, the less you have to try to hide things with your quilting. So those are just some tips I have for you. All right, let's get started making our bat block. The first piece that we're going to do is our bat fabric piece, which is these 2 outside wing tips. So you're going to take your fabric piece and you're also going to need some of your fabric G pieces. Now these are your background piece. And again, it's really important that your background not be directional, only because you have all of these different angles and things, and your background, it would make it chaotic if you were trying to keep straight. If you have that skill and that level of patience, then you are welcome to try. But I much prefer and very much recommend using a non-directional background fabric. All right, so we're going to begin by drawing diagonal lines on the backs of our fabric G pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and draw another one right here. And you just need to do one. And what I like to do when I'm marking mine is put my pen right on the corner and use that as a guide so I know about how far away it is, so I can take into account the width of my pen and that kind of thing. We're going to start by taking one of our fabric G background pieces and placing it at the bottom of our fabric A bat piece. Then you're going to sew right on that drawn line. You'll cut away the seam allowance and then press it open, and it will look like this. So you can see in this one now, I have angled this one direction. This is angled the opposite direction. So you will have 2 of these fabric A pieces. One will be angled going from up on the left down, and the other will be up on the right and down in order to make mirror images of each other. So this is the part where you need to pay really close attention to which part of the bat you're working on so that you can get your angles correct on these diagonal lines. So once you have sewn your line, cut away the seam allowance and pressed it, then we are going to repeat the same thing with a second background fabric square. And this one we're going to line up with the top of our bat fabric A piece. And you want to make sure that that diagonal line is going the same direction as the one on the bottom. So you'll get to here, you'll sew on that line. It will look something like this. You can see my sewn line right there. Then again, you're going to cut away about 1/4 inch from that sewn line. I like to press the seam allowances on these open only because I feel like it reduces some of the bulk and it helps that diagonal seam lay a little bit flatter. And then your fabric piece is going to look like this. So again, you will repeat this for the second side of your bat with the angles going in the opposite direction. So once you have finished your 2 fabric A pieces, they should look like this. All right, now we're going to move on to the fabric B pieces, and those are these larger, thicker segments here. And we're going to repeat the same process using our fabric G background squares, diagonal lines. You're going to put one at the bottom, and it's going to connect the 2 outside corners of your fabric B piece, sew along it, cut away your seam allowance, press that open, and then you're going to repeat it for the second side, this time with the angle on the bottom going in the opposite direction. So you'll place it, sew along, trim away, press it down, and then you will have your fabric B piece that will look like this. You need 3 of these fabric B pieces for your bat. So that's going to create the body of the bat and these 2 thicker wing pieces. Once you have those 3 done, our final piece is this inner wing piece. And to make this piece, we're going to start with our fabric C bat wing piece, which is the same width as the first piece that we started with. It's just shorter. Okay, so you're going to take your shorter one and you're going to take a fabric G piece and you are going to line them up on the bottom and then just sew right across that short side and press that down and away. So that's going to create this bottom flat line right there. And then it's going to look just like that. And then again, you're going to take some fabric G pieces and make sure you have the diagonal lines on the back. And then you're going to place one going again from up on the left down to the right. And then on the second fabric C piece, you're going to have this diagonal line going in the opposite direction. So if you are chain piecing these, if you are, you know, kind of marching through, you need to really make sure you're paying attention to these angles here. You're going to sew along that diagonal line, trim away, and press it open. And again, it is going to look just like this. Again, note the 2 angles going in the opposite directions. So the next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and assemble the body of our bat. So we are going to take our 3 fabric B pieces, our 2 fabric C pieces, and then our 2 fabric A pieces. And we are just going to line them up. So it's going to go A, B, C, B, C, B, A. And this is all in your pattern. So you're just going to take each of these and sew each of these seams together to create the body of your bat. The final thing that we have to do to put our bat together is just sew the ears. And it's really the exact same process. It's just taking your background piece, and I've totally done this one wrong, so don't do this. I sewed it on the back side. You're going to take your little ear pieces. These are fabric D bat pieces. And then you are going to put them on the right side, right sides together on your background fabric piece here. This is fabric H if you are doing the Batty Pumpkin mini quilt. You will draw a diagonal line on these pieces, but again, you are going to be sewing these diagonally. And so there's something that I wanted to point out with this one. So this is a directional fabric. It has words and letters on it, and the entire bat body is all going the right direction. So I just wanted to pay attention to the ears here and make sure that once I'm done, that my fabric is going to be going the right direction. So on this one, I want to take the top of my ear piece here. This is fabric D. And I want the top of it to point to the outside of my background fabric H piece. So this is the top of the bat ear piece. This is going to be my diagonal line that I'm going to draw. So while I have it in place, so I know which direction I need that angle to go, I'm going to just trace it on there. And that way I'm going to sew right on there. And then when I press and fold, so this on this side here, the top of my piece is to the outside of that fabric H piece. So this is the top of my bat ear piece. Again, it's directional. So when I fold this down, you can see that I have the direction of my letters going the correct way. So if you are using a directional fabric for your bat, the rest of the bat body is really easy to keep upright and directional. It's just when it comes to these ears, you want to make sure that the top of your fabric piece is to the outside on the short sides of your fabric H piece to make sure that when you sew that angle and flip it down, that is going to be in the right direction. So you're going to place your square, sew, trim, press, and then again repeat for the second side so that you have both of your ear pieces pressed down. And then once that is pressed, then you will take 2 of these fabric eye background pieces, and then you will just sew them on either side of your ear piece. Once that's done, then you're going to line it up with your bat body piece and sew it into place. Now you can pin these seam allowances where the ears meet up with the body piece and line those up, and I suggest pinning them to get them as close to lined up as you can. And then once those are done, then I just press the whole bat piece flat. If you need to restarch it a little bit there, you can, so that this lays nice and even. And then you're going to repeat that for the remainder of your bats for your project. If you are doing the Batty mini quilt, then you will need 4 if you're doing the tabletopper version. If you're doing the pillow version, there are 3 bats that you will need. And if you're doing the mini quilt, you just need to make 1, so you're already finished. So once you have all your bats done, you've gathered your pumpkins and your stars, now we're ready to assemble our entire Batty pumpkin tabletopper. So I'll see you in the next video, and until then, happy sewing, my friends.